All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this AACOM forum series on transitions in medical education hosted by the Assembly of Osteopathic Graduate Medical Educators, the AOGME, and the AOGME Residents and Fellow Council, which is the RFC. My name is Dr. Linda Logan, and I'm the chair of RFC, and I'll be the facilitator for today's session. I'm currently a PGY4 in combined anatomic and clinical pathology at the University of Vermont Medical Center. This is the second session on an introduction to research, featuring some breakout rooms to connect and meet with research experts. We are thrilled to feature RFC members as panelists for this interactive session. And to learn more about the webinar series and the RFC, you can go to aacom.org/AOGME webinar series, and we can put that in the chat as well, that you can just click on it easily. Please also join us on April 8th and May 6th for the next Transitions in Medical Education Forum series. And before we get started, just some housekeeping notes. I'd like to just review them for you. Remain muted. If you need to speak, raise your hand through Zoom's function. And if called by a panelist, you can unmute to ask your questions. If you have questions for the panelists, please feel free to submit them through the chat feature at any time or use the raise your hand function again. And if you experience technical issues, please use the chat feature and we can assist you with those issues. If you have questions for our panelists during the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the chat feature at any time, just whenever you'd like. So we're going to start with some introductions. I've already introduced myself, but we can go ahead and go to Mustafa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mustafa. I'm a PGY3 in radiation oncology at University of Wisconsin in Madison. I went to Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine in Pikeville, Kentucky, and I finished in 2021, I believe. And I like research, and I'm probably going into an academic medicine career. And so, I'm interested in oncology, but also I've been working with, a number of other people in medical education. I've done a few case reports. So I'm really excited for this and happy to engage and talk with you all.
Thanks, Mustafa. Can we go on to Amanda, please?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So I'm Dr. Amanda Brooks. I have a PhD in molecular biology, and I am a professor of molecular biology at Rocky Vista University, and I'm also the vice provost for research and scholarly activity here. So I really look forward to addressing some of your questions today.
All right, thank you. And Jane?
I'm Dr. Jane Dumshaw. I'm at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm at all three, responsible for all three campuses, but based in Philadelphia. My PhD is in health science, which is research design and evaluation and health curriculum, things like that. So I'm really good at finding ways to do research that are not resource intensive.
Awesome. And Brian should be on when he's able. We're all super busy working a bunch, and so he has a lot of great research experience to share, which we should see him at the breakout rooms. So sorry about that. So I just wanted to thank all the panelists who joined us to speak today and share your experiences, perspectives, and advice regarding initiating research. So I guess we could start off with a couple questions just to kind of kick off the session and to kick off the discussion. So whoever wants to speak, I guess we can just kind of jump in when you'd like. Could each of you please share what factors should be considered when selecting a research topic?
I'm happy to kick that one off, Linda. I think at our VUCOM, the thing that I always tell students is above all, our number one rule for research is it's got to be fun. If it's not fun, you're doing it wrong, and you got to change your question. You guys have so many other things on your plate that research should be the one thing that you're doing for you. It should be the thing that you're doing because you are passionate about the topic and you want to dive deeper. And so I think that that's always kind of my governing rule. If somebody approaches me and says, Dr. Brooks, I've got this great question, but they don't seem overly passionate, I'm like, it might be a good question, but is it your question? So I think that's always kind of my guiding principle.
For me, it's also about feasibility. Sometimes they have an idea that's too big an idea that, you know, you'll be 90 before you get the research done. You need to refine it some. But also along the lines of what Dr. Brooks said, sometimes it's too nebulous. So they need to have a more, as with refined and feasible also comes not just I want to do some research because I want a resume enhancer. It should be something that you do have some passion or at least a strong interest in.
Yeah, completely agree with both of those points. The other thing I would add is as medical students or even as residents, you want to put something on your resume, on your CV, and it needs to be fun so that when you're working during the weekend, you're enjoying what you're doing and you're excited for the analysis or putting together something like a product together. The other thing is relevance to what you're doing. As a sometimes undifferentiated medical student, it might be, I don't know what I'm doing. And just the fact of acquiring some skills doing research that are translatable to many different specialties is valuable. It doesn't have to be uh, clinical projects or basic bench research, even clinical cases that you see across your third and fourth year. Just putting that together, looking at the literature, synthesizing that information in a coherent manner, that's a skill in and of itself. But if you find something that is relevant to your particular interest, great. If not, that is perfectly fine. The other thing is, and we can talk about that later, is mentorship. It's incredible in both honing in your research question, the feasibility, the fun part, the relevance. You need to have good mentors as well as sponsors in your when you're starting your research career.
I loved the undifferentiated medical student comment. As you could tell, he's a radiation oncologist and I'm pathology. So it's kind of like a multipotent stem cell that's like hasn't turned into what kind of specialty you want to go into yet, kind of similar to the tumor. So that was
Just don't
super
be malignant.
funny.
Malignant in your
I love
differentiation.
that so much. That was so funny. Okay, all right. So the next question is, how can you get involved in research virtually or remotely? As a lot of things have gone that way. And are there opportunities for research in the remote setting in general? Kind of how do you approach that?
I can take a stab at this. So I did some stuff during COVID. I was in Ohio and I did a bunch of work with other people across the country. And really, virtually, you can get more done than you think. It goes back to what are you interested in? At the time I was interested in radiation oncology. So I attended some meetings and I connected with people. And I basically told them, I'm a medical student interested in radiation oncology and I'm interested in learning about the specialty. Do you have something you're working on? Other people, I was more direct and specific in what I was interested in. I believe it was a head and neck, uh, you know, uh, type problem. And the person was working on it, and we were able to connect and put something together. You don't have access to patient information, which is perfectly fine. You can either get if you're putting a case together, you can just get a history, and you can synthesize it and look at the literature yourself and put it together. And if you're doing analysis, you can just get de-identified spreadsheet, and you can either, if you're coding, you can code it. If you're doing basic analysis, you can do that in Excel. And people, you'd be surprised, a lot of faculty in academic medicine have a lot of ideas and excited about things, but they don't have time to do it, and they're more than willing and happy to work with and mentor others.
Yeah, along those same lines, if I'm not mistaken, radiology is one of the first specialties to go to telemedicine, right? To use telemedicine way back in the day, so they could have a radiologist at a remote site read images. Right. So I was in radiology before this at Jefferson. But anyway, yeah, think about how you're value added to a project. It doesn't matter if you're in person or remote. So if you're really good at searching the literature, or you're good at drafting manuscripts or doing data analyses or whatever it may be, think even things like tables and graphs. If you're really good at that, you can be a value added. And that's certainly something where you don't have to be face to face.
I'd also say that to start or join any research project, just like the the panelists have said, adding value and figuring out what you can do, you always have to dig into the literature first to figure out what do you actually know and to educate yourself. And so that's always a great opportunity to refine your questions, develop new questions, and provide that value added, and do so in a very much self-directed kind of remote learning way.
One other thing, at least in the radiation oncology realm, we have within our society opportunities to apply for research, and within those opportunities, there are a list of mentors that people can reach out to and work with, for different clinical projects. Those, you don't have to be in the same state, you don't have to be in the same school. And so really a lot of work can be done remotely and virtually. You basically, if you're going to reach out to someone, just be intentional and mindful of that interaction and follow through, so as, not to burn bridges, and they can give you more projects.
I think it's important to also remember that research is not just bench work. So there's other topics that count as research, and therefore remote working is a lot easier. If you're doing, bench work where you're watching cells, Western blot or something, you obviously can't remotely do that. But if it's something with, for instance, with like AOG and me, we're able to do a lot of research about like, how you think, medical students, kind of more like psychology and that kind of thing. That's research as well. So I think it's important to remember to not be limited only to bench work or basic sciences. It goes much more beyond that, and kind of like the case study world. But that's a lot more common in residency because you're actively seeing patients that are yours, and then you can kind of write their cases. So that's a little bit different, but just reminding you of that. Let's see.
Chronic health
So
records are another good way to do it.
mhm.
So, I mean, they require IRB and to make sure that you fit the criteria for exempt from informed consent. And some of the other things that Mustafa mentioned, same thing, but there's plenty that you can do. And if you're analyzing de-identified data, you still need IRB, but you may not be considered an investigator, so you don't have to go through as many burning hoops. The PI is, but you are not as the co-investigator or trainee.
Mhm. Yeah. And, she's alluding to the IRB a little bit. There's like trainings online you can do for IRB. IRB is a pretty time consuming process, but it's a very important process. So if you're more interested in that to like figure out more, there's a lot of resources online to read about IRBs before you get started with one if you sign up for one. The next question is, how can we expand our network within the research community? As students or as residents? How do we get to know researchers per se?
Great question, because it really goes to developing yourself as a professional. And so there's two different ways that I usually approach this. One is going to conferences and finding a conference that you want to go to that's in your field, that's in your specialty of interest. And then don't just be a wallflower when you're at the conference. Really make yourself go and talk to people, ask questions, and don't be afraid of not knowing something. You're there to learn. And then the other thing, and I think Mustafa alluded to this earlier, was when you find that mentor, choose somebody who has a network that you really appreciate them, the mentor, kind of their network. And because one of their jobs, a really good mentor, is also going to make introductions. They're going to help you get to know people, and they're going to be able to recommend those conferences that you should go to, or those publishers or editors you should get to know, and they will make introductions for you. So I think those are my two main tips.
Yeah, agreed. As recent as January, I was at a conference, and I'm interested in GI malignancies, and a couple people gave really interesting talks, and I just went up to them and said, "Hey, that's really cool stuff you're doing. Are you working on anything else? Do you need help with anything? I would love to connect with you and talk about stuff." And we're having meetings set up. It's all via Zoom. Things that we can either work together as a review article, talk about just as mentors, what kind of things I should be looking out for at a future job. how would I position myself well for this type of job, so on and so forth. So going to conferences is fantastic. The other thing you can do is, as a medical student undergrad, when I was trying to get some basic bench research, you just call people, send them an email, and out of 10, maybe 1 or 2 respond. But one of those people who responded to me has been my, I would say, lifelong mentor, and she's been fantastic. And I am here today because of, the work that we've done together. And so don't be afraid to reach out. And it doesn't have to be, I have a concrete idea. You can just say, I'm interested in working with you. And is there anything you have in mind, or if we can chat together and find a project?
Student level, there's the Council of Student Government Presidents has a representative at each school, so you can reach out to them. They may have suggestions. But along the lines of what Amanda and Mustafa said, you need to be somewhat more specific than just, hey, I'm interested in research. You have to, everybody says that, and everybody wants a resume enhancer, and I get emails sometimes from students, including students in undergraduate, not even undergraduate medical students, who want to come and spend the summer. And that's fine if they can do it on a volunteer basis, but we need to know, well, what? Because I can't play matchmaker if I don't know what you're interested in. And if you haven't done your homework by even looking at our website to see our faculty interests and what might be a match for yours.
And just to echo, that is a really important point. When I was an undergrad, I had 2 options, and one was more in line with what I was interested in, and I think it was a much better fit. The other one was something much more esoteric than what I was interested in, and so it is important to make sure you're picking an interest or making it fun, as it was already alluded to. As research can be long and it can be tiring, and so it's important to pick something you're actually interested in, just like any other thing in med school, and we're interested in something, it's more interesting and fun, and we take more time with it. The last question here, just to kind of kick it off, is how do you recommend approaching a resident or an attending physician to start a case study on a patient? Like, say you saw a patient and it's a really interesting case presentation. How do you start that process?
Yeah, so the first thing I would probably do, and I did that as a student and also as a resident, although to a lesser extent, is you basically, if you see something interesting and cool, you talk to whoever is the next chain up. Is it the resident? Is it the attending? Say, hey, I thought this is really cool. It could be bread and butter and you're just not familiar with it, and there's like 5 million cases of it. Or it could be a really unique presentation of a common thing. And so just talk to someone. If they think, you know what, yeah, this is unique, I haven't seen many of those before, then you would go to, PubMed or other resources and try to see, has this been reported before? What is the incidence? How many papers, describing the specific thing? And if it's not there, then you can say, you know what, there's not a lot of literature out there on this particular presentation or treatment. Maybe we should put it together. And then after that, you would sit together and have more of a meeting to figure out a structure and how to go about writing a case report.
I think it also can't be understated that you should keep reading. Even if you don't even have something in mind yet, just keep reading case reports, because it will allow you to recognize what is a good case report. What do you need to know? What should you do? So that then if you do see that patient that's interesting, you kind of know what questions you should be asking of the resident or the treating physician. What you should ask. And you just kind of have that better, you've educated yourself to start. So keep reading. Even if you don't know what you're going to do with it yet, keep reading.
I was just going to mention that a lot of the times when we're going to write up a case study in a journal that we're trying to, discover you know, the audience that we're trying to capture. We will look at previous journals and like based off of what Amanda just barely said, we go look at old articles and case studies and read it and kind of decide, okay, is this how we're going to form ours as well? Are we going to kind of use this type of format? Is this kind of how we should write it? And it's really nice to use those as your references when you're interested in writing your first case study. Use other people's work. Don't plagiarize, obviously, but, you know, look at how other people have done in the past because, you know, nothing changes enough to where it wouldn't look similar. So you have a lot of resources at your fingertips if you want to look at old journals. So that's pretty much all we prepared for, you know, just kind of icebreaker questions. So I appreciate all of the panelists and your great tips for the audience here. It's very helpful. It's nice to talk about it. Welcome back to the main room, and thanks for the panelists in the breakout rooms for taking the time to answer some very valuable questions and just help medical students get engaged in research and hopefully give them more confidence to ask about it. So thank you for your insights and sharing your experience for all who joined us. To sign up for future transition to residency webinars in the series, you could visit the AOGME webinar series webpage, which will be posted in the chat. I think Akram already did post it. If you have any other questions, you can contact us directly. Some of us can put our emails in the chat if that's helpful, Mustafa, myself, Brian, whoever, or you can contact us directly at aogme@aacom.org. And happy match day to all the people who might be in that community. And thank you for joining us. It was really fun, and I hope you learned something or took away some interesting stories. So have a good day.